Helen Henderson, I think it's 9 votes.
They're still counting?
Well, I guess, I don't know the exact laws, but I believe there's an automatic recount. One, half a percent. I don't know, 9 votes, I don't know.
There was one down to 4 votes.
School vote, then that had a lot more votes, I think it was a couple of thousand.
Yeah, the school district is a much bigger jurisdiction. The city's actually encompassed.
Somebody, one of the principals told me that the Sedro-Woolley School District, in terms of size, is the biggest in the state. I said, what?
Really?
I mean, when you think of
Second biggest.
second biggest, so from Samish to Big Lake, that's big.
It's a very large geographical district.
Yeah, I'll remember that second, so that's but correct.
We actually were the largest at one time.
I think he told me that one of the principals like 10 years ago, so.
Yeah, I can't remember which district it is now.
Which ones are they? Who?
I can't remember.
It must be tough getting bus drivers.
We're just gonna wait a couple more minutes before to see if Pat gets here.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Looking forward to working with the mayor and council.
Yeah.
And hopefully you'll get some good replacements.
Yes. We already have one woman in the audience tonight that she's going to introduce herself during the public hearing. We'll still get on that in just a minute. Nicole, we'll give it one more minute before we pledge to see if Pat gets here.
Sounds good.
Everybody can turn their mics on.
Maybe that's both of ours.
We can share.
Yeah.
We're not gonna be talking over each
Hey,
other.
Bill, are you online? Bill?
Bill is on vacation, so I'll be taking over for him.
Okay, you can start recording now. Will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we will open up the November 20th Planning Commission meeting at 6:32 PM. And roll call, Commissioner Freiberger,
Present.
Commissioner Koch,
Present.
Commissioner Johnson,
Present.
Commissioner Fournette,
Here.
Commissioner Maddox, absent, Commissioner Fatisi, present, Commissioner Huggins, absent. So as we begin, has everybody had an opportunity to take a look at the October 17th meeting minutes? Any comments?
No comments from me.
I didn't have any. Danielle, Joe?
I couldn't find a thing wrong.
Okay, I looked as well, looking for the commas and everything myself. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the October 17th meeting minutes?
I so move.
I have a first from Commissioner Freiberger, a
I
second.
will second.
Second from Commissioner Fournette. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Motion carries. So as you know, we're going to open up our general public comments meeting. So prior to opening the general public comments, if anyone wishes to speak, please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. Comments may also be submitted via email or mail ahead of all scheduled monthly planning commission meetings and read into the record at that time. So is there anything to get read into the record?
Nope.
Okay. So when you come forward, just please state your name and your address or any organization that you represent. So I know I have one person coming up right now. Cassandra, this is your time. So just a little background here. Cassandra, what do you call it? She applied for one of our open planning commission spots. So I invited her here tonight to introduce herself. She interviewed for myself and Nicole, and yeah, I think you're going to be a great fit. So go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Cassandra Sexton. I live at 901 Jameson Street in Sedro-Woolley. We are slowly renovating this plain house, which is an old historical Victorian here in town. I'm currently the president of the Sedro-Woolley Youth Football League. It's my 4th year on the board, my 2nd term, which will be up the end of December. And so I had thoughts of maybe getting involved in the city in some way, since I love the community and want to stay engaged. But pass the baton on to our younger families that are coming up in our youth football program. And someone had taken a screenshot of the listing for a planning commissioner that was posted on your city page and said, hey, we think you'd be good for this. So I applied, and as Joe said, interviewed. I did graduate with a degree in architecture. I worked with an architect for a few years. I'm married to a general contractor who's had a successful wine cellars, saunas, and humidors business for 35 years. But for the last 10 years, I've been working in aerospace, where I am the commercial business development director for Response AES. We do cabin interiors and avionics systems and data buses. So that's kind of my day in the life. I'm the mother of 5. My youngest 2 kids are tagging along with me today. They just finished their basketball, and so we just thought we'd come in and say hi.
Hi.
Any questions for me?
No.
Okay, great. Well, nice to meet you, and I look forward to getting engaged.
Thanks, Cassandra.
So one thing I forgot to do, we opened up at 6:34 PM for open public hearing, and we're going to close at 6:36 for general public comments. I'm
Paul,
sorry.
did you want to? Yeah, we have
Oh,
another.
I'm sorry. I thought you were here on a different matter.
Hi, I'm Paul Heap at 8643 Westerman Road, and that's just out off the F&S Grade Road out of the city limits area. I have about 90 acres in that area, and we farm. It's all crop farming, and I have a 5-acre piece that is in the city limits, and I would like to sell the house off of the 5 acres and keep the land in farming. And it's been a kind of a hassle because I don't care to subdivide and do all that. I would like just to sell a lot and the house and keep the rest of the land. And but it's to do a borderline adjustment or a
Boundary line adjustment,
line
right.
adjustment. Can't do it because one's in the city and piece to the north is in the county. So I'm kind of in the middle there. Can't do much just by selling the house off. So. Any questions?
We're going to be doing something, we're going to be talking about some other things, but that's a really unique situation. Why wouldn't you be able to do a boundary line adjustment on something like that?
It's that cross-jurisdictional issue there. So I spoke to the county about a possibility of a boundary line adjustment there. Kind of spoke on that the state does have the ability to correct. It's essentially an annexation process, but more of a boundary line adjustment. So the issue being, if you boundary line adjust 2 pieces of property, one being in the county, one being in the city, the boundary line adjustment does not move the city line. So
Right.
you're essentially creating a portion of property that's in county, a portion of property that's in city. It's kind of creating an issue, and they don't want to do that. So, and there's issues with addressing that comes about that,
Right,
things like
yeah.
that. So, basically, even though the state does provide a solution to that, they're like, well, don't create a problem and then go and fix it afterwards. Is essentially what they told me. So, yeah, sounds like they're not open to that option. So.
We'll think about this. If it's 5 acres, okay, that's a significant portion. I mean, all you're basically doing is getting two separate addresses. So I can't see why you can't subdivide or just do a minor subdivision, okay, and split them up. And we were talking about that earlier today.
And that's a topic of discussion later.
Right.
that
We're going to
we'll
be talking about
discussing.
something later on that deals with things similar to this, but that's really unique, so I'm glad you brought it up, but it's not getting tabled like it's going to get swept under the rug. Let's figure out what
Yeah.
we can do here, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, we'll try and make it as painless as possible.
So you were, a lot meaning just like a 8,400 square foot lot, or,
Yeah, 100 by 20 or whatever.
okay, just something around the house? Okay.
And then I've had renters in there for 12 years and excellent renters, and they'd like to buy it. And so that would make it easy for both of us if we can make it work.
Yeah, those require separate, I'm doing a boundary line adjustment right now in Marysville, and it doesn't have the complexity of two different jurisdictions. So when you do a boundary line adjustment, or just even that type of subdivision, all new legal descriptions need to get recorded. There's a whole bunch of other things behind the scenes that need to happen before you can transfer title for whatever you're looking to sell. But this is unique. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Is anybody online that would like to speak? Okay, at this point, I will close the open public, the general comments section at 6:41. So moving on to the public hearing of possible amendments to Chapter 17.24 SWMC to add a minimum commercial floor retail area requirement for the first floor area facing Primary Street, frontage in the CBD. Take it away, Nicole.
Okay. All right, so we've seen this one a number of times now, but here we are at public hearing. So just a brief overview for you guys. Because there are currently no regulations specifying a minimum floor area requirement for commercial or retail use in mixed-use buildings in the CBD, commercial and retail spaces are shrinking. They're becoming overtaken by residential space as people remodel these buildings. And to mitigate that issue, staff has proposed to put a requirement in place that 50% of the first floor area facing primary street frontage must be designated for commercial and/or retail use. We also clarified that private garage spaces don't count toward commercial and/or retail space. We've also placed parameters on the size and location of main entrances to multifamily residential units in the effort to prevent lobby areas from overtaking that viable commercial space. At the last Planning Commission meeting in October, the Planning Commission requested that one minor edit be made and to prepare for this public hearing. So that requested edit was made. I clarified that the location of the main entrance to the residential units of a mixed-use building within the CBD shall be located at the rear of the building, and if rear access is not feasible, the main entrance may be incorporated into a maximum of 10% of the commercial and/or retail floor area facing the primary street frontage at the planning director's discretion. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the proposed amendments to Chapter 1724 Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code.
Hey, just one quick question. I was going through the, some of the policy, specifically, do we have this on the books? E319, promote the sprucing up of downtown? Is that what's in there, or is that the proposed language?
Oh, that's in there. That's in our comp plan.
We're going to be redoing it. We're going to be looking at the comp plan next year anyway. That would be a time. I just put something like updating and remodeling instead of sprucing up. I don't know.
Strange language, yeah. No, I did a little double take when I was reading it too. I was like, really? There it is, lo and behold.
Okay, at this time, I will open up the public hearing for possible amendments to Chapter 1724 SWMC to add a minimum commercial residential floor area requirement for first floor area facing primary street frontage in the CBD at 6:44 PM. Do we have anyone in the audience here to comment on the proposed changes? Or is there anyone online that would like to comment? Okay, with that, we will close it at 6:45, and now it's open for discussion. Commissioner Koch, let's start with you at the end there.
We've pretty thoroughly discussed this, and I think the language that we have, thanks to Nicole, and is very well done, and I have no further comment.
Commissioner Johnson.
I mean, I would echo my fellow commissioner that we've discussed this pretty thoroughly. I do really appreciate the language that is in here. I think it captures pretty much everything that we had discussed and really agreed upon. And I think it really helps to keep and maintain the character of the CBD and making sure that it remains a commercial-centric district versus a residential-centric district. I do realize that there are housing shortage issues, particularly in Skagit County, but at the same time, there is an ebb and a flow to the need for commercial space, and I don't think it's worth letting residential overtake commercial for the sake of trying to solve that problem when we will at some point down the road be needing that commercial space. So I think it's important that we preserve it, we preserve the integrity of downtown, and I think that we accomplish this with this language.
Thank you. Commissioner Fournette.
You captured it perfectly. And plus you laid out about 11 reasons why it's going to help with the CBD.
Agree.
Yeah.
Commissioner Freiberger.
No, looks good. This is something I may just not be recalling from previous discussions on this. 10% is deemed to cover pretty much the maximum they would need to have even a door on the front of the building.
I'd gone and talked with the building inspector and kind of laid out, okay, well, now we're talking about elevators and stairwells and things like that. Do you think 10% would work? And we kind of mathed it out, and they agreed 10% would be perfect, yeah.
Sounds great then.
Everybody did a really good job on this. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to recommend that the city council approve the proposed amendments to chapter 17.24 SWMC. Do I have a first?
I so move.
First by Commissioner Koch,
I second.
second by Commissioner Johnson. Do we have any more further discussions? So at this point, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Good job, Nicole.
Thank you.
So we have no unfinished business, no new business. So let's go on to item I, Planning Commission discussion, information items. Consider circumstantial reductions of the minimum density requirement of 4 dwelling units per acre for subdivisions. Take it away.
Okay. So this one's an interesting one. The reason this topic of discussion was brought to the table was several Sedro-Woolley residents have come to me with requests to subdivide larger properties. Typically, they have an acre or more, into 1 or 2 smaller lots. Typically, they're looking for minimum lot size, maybe a little larger. Looking to do it through the short subdivision process, maybe to sell off the remaining property. But with the requirements that subdivisions must meet a minimum density of 4 units per acre, it can't be done. It's been a point of contention for many. Often people don't have the desire or the means to perform a subdivision that meets that minimum density requirement. Civil infrastructure is very expensive. Not a lot of people can afford that. There's also many that are interested in keeping the viable farmland that we do have kind of on the outskirts of the city, and find it good to maintain that as such. So looking into this a little bit further, I know that cities are required to comply with the GMA. And what the GMA does is it has a list of things that cities are required to follow. So in this case, the 4 units per acre density is a framework that the GMA came up with to address the issue of urban sprawl. So cities are required to plan for reduction of urban sprawl. The 4 units per acre was a framework that they came up with, and that was kind of a best practice to deal with it. But there is case law. I attached the Viking Properties versus Oscar W. Holm example, where it was ruled that the GMA does not have the authority to make public policy per se, due to it being a quasi-judicial agency that serves a limited role. So in short, cities are required to bear that ultimate responsibility of reducing urban sprawl under the GMA, but however they see fit in ways that best serve their respective communities. So I think that it is important that Sedro-Woolley comply with the requirements of the GMA first and foremost. I don't think the 4 units per acre should be entirely disposed of, but I do think that there might be creative ways for us to maybe allow circumstantial reductions or maybe show that that can be achieved over time. So in the memo I hope you've had a chance to review, I did give an example of how Mount Vernon's been able to do that. They have a zone that they call the R1 3.0 zone that allows for no more than 3.23 dwelling units per acre if they can show that there are physical constraints present on the property, typically surrounded by environmental factors. So, critical areas, wetlands, the obvious ones. But they also have kind of taken a more liberal interpretation of physical constraints. So unique open space character, sensitivity to environmental disturbances, those things count. So how did they chose properties that were containing or next to pre-existing neighborhood communities to zone this way. And they argued that that zoning complies with the GMA because it protects the existing character of those existing neighborhoods. That's one of the requirements of the GMA. Promotes a variety of residential densities and housing types, another requirement of the GMA. And encourages the preservation of existing housing stock, another requirement of the GMA. So kind of a creative option there that they used. And then a thought that I had as I was pondering this was, what if we used shadow platting? A lot of jurisdictions do use this. Typically, it's what developers will do if they're maybe planning a larger development project. They'll do this with industrial properties or for long plats, and they're just kind of trying to figure out what might work. So they'll send these plans through for kind of it's almost like a pre-app. Well, they'll go in and get the comments from staff, see what might work in the future. But the shadow platting, it does not perform an actual subdivision. It just kind of shows you what would work on the property on paper. So the idea I had is, what if we allowed people to apply for a short plat, which would subdivide off, say, 1 or 2 properties at minimum lot size. Say they had an acre property. This was kind of the example I gave. They have an acre property and they want to subdivide to 8,400 square foot lots in the R5 zone. Then on a separate submittal document, they would show this short plat with a shadow plat kind of attached to it as well. So those 2 lots, and in addition, you show the 2 remaining. So you show, in the future, this could be 4 units per acre, but for now, all I want is the 2 lots. You would show, I can still put access back here. I can throw all the civil infrastructure back here. It's doable in the future, but for now, all I want is this short subdivision. So that's an idea. But I wanted to get this on the table, get the discussion started, just because this is something that comes up very frequently for me. It's a real problem that people have in this community. I think it's important that that be voiced and discussed, whether this is something that we want to pursue further. So.
Hey, just a quick question. So when the owner of let's say they keep the bigger piece, and then they sell their property sometime in the future, is that going to be something recorded on title that says, hey, at some point, this needs to be divided into two houses? Like you can't, let's say you want to take the house down and you want to build a new one. How do we want to handle those mechanics? It kind of get a little bit sticky on something like that, especially on transferability. You don't want to encumber the title with something that, basically takes the value away from the current
Sure.
owner.
That is a
Especially
good
if you
point.
ran into some estate issues. too.
Oh, yeah,
That's a good point.
By the way, good job on the first, on the discussion on that first sentence. That was a really good explanation of
thought so, too.
what the GMA does. And the Central Puget Sound Hearings Board, they have a tremendous amount of power. So when I'm looking at this, it's kind of like they don't set public policy, but they kind of do.
Yeah, but they don't. It's weird. Yeah. Yeah.
They definitely do.
Okay, we'll start. Danielle, let's start with you. Any comments on this?
Well, I actually mentioned it to one of our staff today, and she said exactly this. Well, basically shadow planting, and I hadn't heard that term before, but she said, yeah, basically, because a lot of times what you're encountering is somebody has lived there for a very long time, they're wanting to sell off part of the property for additional revenue or whatever, and then, but keep, kind of a buffer around themselves for a while, so a larger piece, and then as soon as they pass away, their kids are going to go and subdivide it.
Right.
And so, should we stand in the way of something like that? There's no real reason to if there's a way to satisfy both the GMA and the, so I think this is a good thing to look at if we don't actually have this already in place for people to do.
Right.
So,
What does .23 of a housing unit look like? Right, I mean, typically, when I see code, if it goes over .5, you round up, you get another unit. What is that,
I don't
doghouse?
know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
and I'm not sure either on that. I know there's some interesting rules about when you can round up and when you can round down on that.
Yeah.
So,
Where Mount Vernon would be an example of, because I'm familiar with it, and you're the permit tech, where exactly do they have that zone?
well, I would have to look at the zoning map. I don't know offhand. Honestly, I was not aware of that, the density there being actually less than the minimum required until Nicole brought it up in the staff report, which is really interesting to me, so.
Yeah, I would expect with the R1 zoning being an environmentally constrained type of zoning, it probably doesn't pop up a lot in the city. I know that city of Sedro-Woolley doesn't currently have any R1 properties inside city limits. We have to the north in the UGA, there's that mine property up north that would, if ever annexed in, become R1, but that's it. So, I don't know. I don't know what all Mount Vernon has for R1 type places, but
Well, we do have a lot of land that has critical areas on it, and so that affects, of course, buildability and whatever, but it sounds like this is basically, like you said, on the border of like older neighborhoods, which kind of sounds like maybe older platted lots per se, and, yeah, so.
Commissioner Fournette?
I really like that idea of the shadow, what'd you call it, shadow
shadow platting.
planting. It makes perfect sense to me because instead of taking a 5-acre parcel or something, and if you want to put 1 or 2 houses on it, why should you split it 13, 14, 15 ways when you just want 1 or 2? And as long as they're strategically placed where they're not right in the center of it or something, like you say, you design a short, or like a subdivision, and you see what the overlay looks like for 20, 30, 40 years in the future. But for right now, you just want one or two. Why not? Why do you have to do it all at the same time? And if things are going to be affordable, like we're trying to make affordable, let somebody have 1 lot or 2 lot or 3 lots. Why put in 13 or 15 when you don't have the money for it, but somebody down the road will. So it does exactly what the GMA wants. Eventually, those will be houses, but why do they have to be houses right now? Just because somebody wants 1 or 2, why do you have to have all of them? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you opening this up to discussion, and I think it would be perfectly fitting with what Mr. Hebe is trying to do. Let 1 or 2 lots exist there, and eventually, maybe the whole thing will be filled in 40, 50 years when he's not farming it anymore.
Right.
But it makes perfect sense. And
Thank
I
you.
think it's easy to pass along because it's not upsetting anything. Then the house is a house is a house. It's still sitting there. The rest of it's still developable. Doesn't matter who owns it. Anybody can own it. A developer can come in and develop it. He might leave those 1 or 2 houses. He might knock those 1 or 2 houses down, but it's still a lot, and makes perfect sense.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
I'm both simultaneously really glad that you brought this up, and also not so much that it would be at the end of my tenure. And this is such an intriguing concept. I wish I was going to be a part of it moving forward. I really do like this idea. I think it's definitely worth exploring for sure. I think it also fits with Woolley, because Woolley recognizes both the need for housing, but also to be able to maintain the character of the city, not have it be overly dense, but at the same time for situations like Mr. Hebe, where we recognize the need for, agricultural land as well and the preservation of that. And so it would allow him and others to possibly capitalize on that. I think Commissioner Fournette is absolutely spot on. It provides accessibility for the everyday man to use his property to, be able to, help himself by developing it and doing what he wants with his property, but at the same time, he's not restricted by, overly burdensome costs that have to be incurred in order to make that happen, which usually puts it out of the realm of most people being able to do these sorts of projects. So I think it provides housing, it provides an opportunity for preservation of important lands such as critical areas and agricultural land, and then also provides opportunity for the ability to actually have accessibility to these kinds of projects. And so, and to be able to know that you can push back on the GMA just a little bit is always really nice, because the GMA loves to make you think that it rules the roost and that you must bow down to it. And sometimes I think that, no, we shouldn't. But it's still, yes, you're right. We do need to abide by the GMA by law, but at the same time, like the Vikings decision stated, that policy decisions need to be made by local entities for local needs. And so I think that this is something that that this meets. And whether it's shadow platting or some other creative concept, I think that something in that vein would be really beneficial to the city. And I think the citizens of Sedro-Woolley could really embrace it.
Paul?
Yes, I appreciate the work on this, and I think Mr. Habe gave us a perfect example of why this kind of flexibility needs to be considered, and I think it's a good idea. I think you'd have to be a little careful on a case-by-case basis that you're not walking into, the city isn't walking into something like I had mentioned, an estate battle. We wouldn't want to be near anything like that. But otherwise, I love the idea, and just to echo you, it seems like Sedro-Woolley, and it both preserves the, the character of Sedro-Woolley, but also give people a little flexibility so they're not running into a wall. So,
Thank you.
So just a question. Is this something that we're doing it because of GMA compliance in addition to upgrading our code to allow things like this? Are we tackling two things at once here?
So,
I mean, who would complain? I mean, so let's say we do something like this, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk to Danielle before we, and get the, maybe a parcel number of a property this applies to, and I'll pull the title report, because I want to see what comes on title and how that's actually recorded, because there are some technical nuances here that absolutely need to be looked at as well.
Sure.
So,
Yeah,
sorry.
Oh, I was just looking at the map here, and it looks like, the North Waugh Road, Ridgeway,
Okay.
those subdivisions up there. So I was actually a little bit incorrect there, because I don't think those are super old. Anyway, looks like that is R1 3.0.
we got a plan, though, so that would be a good thing.
Okay.
Anybody else? Would you like to add anything more?
Yeah, I think with, Paul, your concern about estate battles and things like that, shadow platting, it's not a formal subdivision by any means. It's literally just showing the planning department on paper that this can be subdivided in the future the way that, 4 units per acre wants it to be subdivided. The short plat's going to be the only thing that gets recorded, just like any other short plat. So I don't think you would run into those kind of battles in the future because there's nothing binding with the short plat, or with the shadow plat, excuse me, nothing binding by that.
because of the shadow name, and I'm just always leery of getting dragged into court. So.
Right, yes. So the only thing binding would be the actual short plat that happens, that sections off those 1 or 2 properties out of the full, but.
To my understanding, they're basically showing that they're not creating a situation that if they parcel off that larger piece, that there are not, like, they're still buildable lots, right?
Exactly.
And-
They're
and
still
there's enough
serviceable,
for-
you can still
yeah.
provide access,
Yeah.
utilities can get
Yeah.
back there, all that sort of
Yeah.
things shown, but not binding in a legal sense.
So you had in here, and I found this interesting as well, you would have to show that you have the ability to have utilities. In the case of something like this, what if sanitation doesn't exist or water is not available, right? I mean, I've seen situations just on projects I've done here in town that you only have maybe a 2-inch or 1.5 PVC water line that goes up to a single house that's there. And in order to develop 5 acres of property I had up on Beachley, you could put 20 units up there. We have to run a brand-new minimum 8-inch ductile line from Township, from Highway 9 all the way up there. And it goes for like $260 a lineal foot.
Yeah, and I guess that would be something for the future developer to handle at that time. I know that typically, when city sewer is available, developers are required to connect. If it is not, then they're allowed to use septic. But that would be something to cover at the time that that piece does get developed. So,
I'm just looking at the last sentence here. Shadow platting does not constitute an actual subdivision. We get all that. But would show that there is provision for all required infrastructure for additional lots. That might not be the case. And depending on the topography of the lot as well, there's a lot of things you can't do. For instance, if the sewer line is, let's say, up at the top of a street, and then you're going downhill, you don't really pump that stuff uphill.
yeah.
I mean, there's different technologies to do stuff. But anyway, this is just worth a good discussion.
So I guess in those cases where staff reviews and says, hey, there's a problem here, then you can't do it, sorry.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks. So at this point, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? Someone?
I move to adjourn.
Commissioner Johnson adjourn, second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Freiberger, is there any further discussion? Not?
One,
Oh, go ahead.
when can we follow up on what we just talked about?
That'll be up to,
Yeah. If we want to move forward with, I can put more together on, for example, shadow planning, if that's what we like.
okay, for
I
the next
can-
meeting?
It's December 13th. Let me check that December 13th is an actual meeting. But, because there was some discrepancy, like the agenda said our next meeting was going to be in January, and then our calendar says December, so I want to clarify
I
that
thought the
we are.
13th was a council meeting.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the second Wednesday.
Not sure. Might be January, might be December. I'll
Okay.
have to check that. But, yeah, I'll put something together in the subdivision chapter for us to review.
Great. That work for you?
Perfect.
Okay. So back to our adjournment. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. Meeting closes at 7:10 PM. Nobody's going anywhere. We got another meeting coming up.
Yes, we do.
This is for you. We are now the Planning and Business Development Committee agenda. Where did you come up with that
No.
name?
Sorry, no, I don't know why. The more
thought we were the
simpler
historic
system has
committee.
to be so much more complicated. But, yeah. So Historic Preservation Commission, no. Yeah, so. Do you want me to?
Well, I'm going to open it. And,
Okay. Things need to
I'm
do
just
this.
curious because on the memo, it says Sedro-Woolley Historic Preservation Commission.
I know.
Okay, so which one are we right now?
This is the Historic Preservation
Okay,
Commission
so I just
meeting.
make the adjustment here. Okay, I don't believe we need to do a Pledge of Allegiance.
Sure. I
Okay.
can always pledge allegiance
Everybody can
twice.
stand?
New meeting.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our call to order. Commissioner Freiberger,
Present.
Commissioner Koch,
Present.
Commissioner Johnson,
Present.
Commissioner Fournette,
Here.
Commissioner Maddox, absent. Commissioner Fatisi, present. Commissioner Huggins, absent. Okay, with that, on to the consent agenda. Approval of historic registry plaque for posting at 804 Ferry Street. Madam, do you have anything to add to this? Your audio's,
You're muted.
You're muted.
Doesn't look like she's muted though. Oh, she is.
How can you tell?
Did that work?
That works.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, I see.
Good evening. Nice to see everyone again, although you're really tiny on my screen. I must see you in person. Perhaps Nicole shared with you the reason that Terry and I are not there this evening is that despite being vaccinated and boosted throughout the first years of the pandemic and having his COVID vaccination just about 4 weeks ago, Terry, for the first time, has COVID. And since I've been around him, I wasn't going to come with the possibility of bringing anything like that with me. So I'm glad the Zoom is an option. When I met with you the last time, it was to discuss the option, the possibility of having a plaque made that would identify our home as a member, a registrant in the Sedro-Woolley Historic Preservation Registry. Let me get the right name there. The Sedro-Woolley Register of Historic Places. And so I'm back again, asking permission to have such a plaque made. I also understand that at that last meeting, there was a suggestion made by Commissioner Huggins to include the name of the home and also its identification as Valley Hospital on the plaque. And that has caused me to do a lot of thinking about what such plaques might look like going forward as the registry expands. And as you drive around town, you may notice on homes that there are plaques, signs, I would call them more than plaques, next to the front door. The majority of these are in plastic and were given to homeowners who participated in Sedro-Woolley Museum's holiday home tour over the past, I'm not sure how many years, but quite a few years. And so there are a number of those signs. And when we purchased this property and restored it, I went ahead and had 2 metal signs made, and they are by our front door. One refers to the property as the Dr. James and Margaret Mills home, house, circa 1912, and the other says Valley Hospital, 1916 to 1929. So we already have those signs, and I just wasn't certain about whether Commissioner Huggins' comment was a mandate or a suggestion that we also include such language on a plaque.
It wasn't a mandate. It's a good idea, though.
Okay. I mean, I think, part of my thinking about it is that when you folks decide you don't want to keep wearing this hat, seems like you have a lot of hats tonight, when you no longer want to be the Historic Preservation Commission and you appoint people to that 5-member commission, that one of the tasks for that commission would be to design and determine what these signs, the plaques, ought to look like. In a lot of communities, they are standardized and don't include a description of the property. And I think part of based on cost, the more lines, the more words, the more letters that you have on a plaque that is made in this style is more expensive. They would also, if the properties are described on the plaque, they wouldn't all be a standard size. And in some communities, that's viewed as desirable. So the person walking down the street says, oh, look at that sign. Oh, here's another one. These are all buildings. It can be homes. It can be businesses that are on the Heritage Historic Registry in this community. So part of my thinking is that maybe the decision about exactly what the content of the plaques would be could be a task for the commission when it's created.
Have you taken a look at the attachment that was part of the package that Nicole sent out? Did you get that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And the one comment that I made and sent back to Nicole was that there would actually have to be 2 lines with dates, because the dates that are on that draft are accurate for Valley Hospital, but not for the home, because the home was probably built in 1912. The hospital was opened in 1916. So it would be another line item on the plaque. And as I said, we already have that information on signs that are on next to on either side of the front door by the front porch. And where I'm thinking about placing such a plaque would be on the pillars that are also by the front porch. So it'd be in our case, it would be a duplication of content.
So at this point, it just makes sense to just put down how you think it should look and just send it back over to us? Does that make sense?
Well, I did that originally, I think.
I just
So
don't
can
have it
cer-
on this attachment here, and it says that this is the proposed plaque language.
It would have been in an earlier email to Nicole, I believe, for when I came to you at the last meeting.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, the very first rendering that we saw, it just said, "This property has been placed on the Sedro-Woolley Register of Historic Places, #1, by the Sedro-Woolley Historic Preservation Commission." After talking with Jean about her wanting to remove the dates, I kind of made an adjustment to the attachment, so you're not seeing the dates in there anymore. Dr. James and Margaret Mills House and Valley Hospital, so that's kind of the rendering that I did up based on the discussion with Jean. But if that needs to change based on what she wants,
Just add the dates to it?
well, she was saying she doesn't want the dates.
Oh, you don't want the dates?
It's only because they would be visible due to our other signs.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of text on a plaque. I haven't seen, I haven't gone up to Concrete to see what signage they have. I've been told by Bob Mortensen at Mortensen Sign Company that Anacortes also has a local registry, and they have signage. I haven't gone to look at those. What I used, the language I used, mirrored what the Washington State Heritage Registry uses, which is to say this property is placed in the name of the register by, and then what the officiating body is.
So I'm
I
just
thought since this register is just starting, it would be possible to number the entries. And I think that's something that's kind of fun and cool, but not necessarily a requirement. Also, yeah.
So at this point, I'm just looking at your recommendation. We're not doing any specifics. It just says, staff recommends that the Historic Preservation Commission approve Jean Eagleston's request to have a plaque posted on the residence at 804 Ferry Street, providing a brief history of the property and making reference to the property's placement on the Sedro-Woolley Register of Historic Places. So we're not being specific at this time. So I think we can accomplish that to say, yeah, go ahead and do it. At some point, just do a final review of what you want to put on there, and just so we have it as a reference, as an example for somebody else in the future.
Yeah, I
Does that
think
make
it would be nice to have, as a reference for in the future, because like she said, it would be cool to have them numbered, this being #1, the next one that applies, we can look at this again and be like, okay, #2, change the name, change the number, and that's all it takes, but.
So as I see it, the simplest thing, if we want to move on this tonight, would be to just strike out that specific description in the middle there, if we want to have exact language. And then I think Mrs. Eagleston makes a good point that if later down the road there is an Historic Preservation Commission proper, that they can make, I guess, more specific guidelines for the signage. But I also think that there are already a number of old homes in the area that do have plaques similar to theirs that already describe that. And so, and when you're having these engraved, as she pointed out, it can get very costly to have. And it would help with the standardizing to not be super specific on this if you're wanting kind of a one plaque fits all sort of thing.
Sure.
And with the exception of possibly, numbering them.
So where the comma is after 804 Ferry Street, we just strike all of that. Right, and I would want somebody to make a motion to approve Jean Eagleston's request to have a plaque posted on the residence at 804 Ferry Street, and just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to approve Jean Eagleston's request to have a plaque posted on the residence at 804 Ferry Street? First,
I so move.
Commissioner Freiberger, second. I need a second. Go ahead. Who?
Oh, I'll second it.
Commissioner Cox? Do we have any further discussion?
Can I just bring up one point?
Sure.
I guess it's from all my years of working at Western Washington University, and these are buildings, so they're not houses. But on some of those plaques, it says EST and then the date. So they're just saying established. Just a thought to throw out there, because that's very short, so. But those are buildings. They're huge buildings, so. Anyway, I didn't want to throw a monkey wrench into things.
Oh, good.
Oh,
It's all thoughts to consider, you know, if the True Historic Preservation Commission in the future would like to put some guidelines down for plaques, then, yeah, good to consider, yeah.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 0. You got your plaque.
Yeah.
Just don't know the exact look of it.
That's another meeting.
I really appreciate what's done again tonight, and I'm also going to be willing, if it turns out that there is a movement in the future to have standardized plaques, and if what we put up is not appropriate, we'll stick the plaque that we'll have on the back door or someplace. That we would certainly comply if a different kind, a different style, different shape. Some people do oval shapes. Our house, craftsman houses tend to be very angular, very square or rectangular. So that's the style I would use. But if the commission were to decide, let's have oval plaques, I'll make changes that might be necessary. And I would say, just if I may, as a reminder, the Sedro-Woolley Museum's Holiday Home Tour is Saturday, December 9th, and it is a time to see 7 homes that will be open for folks who have purchased tickets, and we're one of them. So if you're curious and want to see this house that you've been hearing about, please come. And if that date doesn't work for you, let me know. We'd be happy to have you come and visit at another time.
You know, now that you have COVID, you're in the hospital.
Hospital was part of the county during that 1918 pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's had serious viruses here.
Yeah.
Maybe they were just laying dormant. Thank you. Okay, unfinished business, we don't have any. No new business. So, anyone would like to make a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
I'll so move.
Commissioner Fournette, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Cox, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 7:27 PM. Thank you.